Can you believe there were only 3 TV channels and no remote controls? Yep, you actually had to get up to change the channel, but that's just the tip of the disco ball iceberg. Ever heard of superhero Underoos or hitchhiking being a thing? Yeah, we bet you haven't, because these are all things from the 70s and they're gonna shock you. Limited TV channels and manual tuning. The 1970s, a time when the TV landscape was drastically different from today's endless streaming options. Picture this, you had just 3 channels to choose from, and if you were lucky, there was also public broadcasting. Yep, that's right, just 3 channels. No Netflix, no Hulu, no Disney+, just good old-fashioned network television. Oh, and if you wanted to switch between those 3 channels, you had to get up and do it manually. No remote controls, no voice commands, just a good old dial on the front of your TV set. Changing the channel meant turning that dial, sometimes with a satisfying click sound, until you found what you wanted. It wasn't exactly as convenient as today's technology, but it also had its charm. Saturday mornings were a big deal back then, especially for kids. Why? Because it was the golden time for Saturday morning cartoons. With such limited options on television during the week, Saturday mornings were when the real magic happened. You'd wake up early, pour yourself a big bowl of cereal, and park yourself in front of the TV for hours of animated adventures. Kind of like cassettes and mixtapes. Cassette tapes and mixtapes. It was like being your very own DJ. You'd sit by the radio for hours waiting for that one perfect song to play so you could record it onto your cassette tape. The key was to get the timing just right. Press the play and record buttons simultaneously and hope that the DJ didn't just start talking over the intro. It was a labor of love, and every mixtape was a carefully curated masterpiece. Recording songs from the radio was a bit of a challenge. You couldn't just click a button and add a song to your playlist. Oh no. You had to rely on the radio station to play your favorite tunes. Sometimes, you'd sit there with your finger on the record button, ready to pounce as soon as the opening chord started. And don't forget those awkward moments when the DJ's voice would creep in and you'd be stuck with the less than perfect recording. But hey, that imperfection was all part of the charm. They had this annoying habit of getting tangled up, which meant you had to whip out a trusty pencil to wind them back in, a skill every 70s kid mastered. And the best part? You could listen to your mixtape anywhere you wanted, as long as you had a cassette player. It was the first taste of what we now call a playlist, and made road trips and walks with your Walkman, remember those, a whole lot more enjoyable. Speaking of enjoyable things, who's heard of superhero Underoos? Superhero Underoos. Okay, so superhero Underoos were every 70 kid's dream come true. Not only were they underwear, but they also doubled as part of your favorite superhero costume. Wearing them made you feel like a real-life superhero, ready to save the day. So if you ever found yourself strutting around the house feeling invincible, chances are you were rocking a pair of these iconic undies. They weren't just undergarments, they were your secret identity. You could be Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, or any other hero you admired. Superhero Underoos were a way for kids to express their love for these iconic characters and step into their shoes, or capes in this case. Unfortunately, modern children may not appreciate underwear in the same way we did back then. Today, it's all about flashy designs and comfort, but for all of us 70 kids, superhero Underoos were more than just clothing. They were a piece of our childhood imagination and a symbol of the heroic adventures. Now, speaking of adventures, going to the record store was a whole adventure all on its own. Record stores as social gathering spots. Record stores in the 1970s were like social hubs for music lovers. It wasn't just a place to buy music, it was a place to hang out, meet friends, and discover some new tunes. The store's atmosphere was always buzzing with excitement, and you could spend hours flipping through records, getting lost in the world of album art and song titles. The interaction between young people and store employees was also something special. Those behind the counter weren't just cashiers, they were music enthusiasts themselves. They knew the latest releases, hidden gems, and could recommend albums based on your taste. Sometimes you'd strike up a conversation with a fellow shopper, bonding over your shared love for a particular artist or band. It was like a musical community that made every visit to the record store an adventure. Exploring records in a record store was an experience unlike any other. The tactile sensation of pulling a record from its sleeve, examining the album art in all of its glory, and carefully placing the needle on the record to hear that warm, crackling sound. It was pure magic. You didn't just buy music, you immersed yourself in it. Today's digital downloads and streaming services may be convenient, but they can't quite replicate the sensory delight of records in a cozy record store. Hitchhiking culture. Hitchhiking was surprisingly prevalent and widely accepted in the 1970s. It wasn't uncommon to see people thumbing a ride on the side of the road, and drivers often didn't hesitate to pick up hitchhikers. It was seen as a way to help out a fellow traveler, and there was a sense of camaraderie on the open road that's hard to understand in today's world of caution and ride-sharing apps. Of course, hitchhiking wasn't without its risks, but that was all part of the adventure. While there was a chance you might encounter a few odd characters or weirdos along the way, it was all part of the fun. Hitchhikers often shared stories, swapped travel tips, and formed unique connections with the people who gave them rides. It was an opportunity to trust strangers and embrace the unpredictability of the journey. Fast forward to today, and hitchhiking has become illegal in many places, with safety concerns taking precedence. The culture has shifted towards more controlled and regulated forms of transportation. While it's undoubtedly safer, it's also lost some of the sense of freedom and spontaneity that hitchhiking once represented. For those who experienced it in the 70s, hitchhiking was an adventurous way to explore the world, making it a unique cultural relic of the past. Telephone party lines. Back in the 1970s, telephone party lines were a fascinating phenomenon. Imagine sharing your phone line not just with your household, but with multiple neighbors as well. It was like a community telephone network where several households were connected to the same line, and everyone could hear each other's conversations, whether intentionally or not. Sharing a single phone line among multiple households meant that your phone rang with not just your calls, but your neighbors too. It was a bit like living in a small, interconnected village, where everyone had to take turns using the phone. Sometimes you'd pick up the receiver to make a call, only to hear your neighbor chatting away, or politely asking you to hang up so they can make a call. Privacy was a luxury, and the unique challenges of party lines included the lack of privacy and having to wait your turn to make a call. However, there were benefits too. It fostered a sense of community and neighborly cooperation. People got to know their neighbors better, and it often resulted in friendly exchanges and helpful conversations. It's a far cry from today's world of individual cell phones and caller ID, where our calls are a private affair. Party lines were a quirky little aspect of communication in the 70s, a time when sharing was caring, even on the telephone. So which of these things from the 1970s has caught your attention? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more historic and nostalgic gems.